next video, which is finding new drugs. So this is discovery of drugs, who discovered them, where they were discovered from, and there's a second video on drug testing. Okay, so let's get into it. So this is a quick question. If at any point during this video you want to pause so that you can have a go at the questions, that's absolutely fine. And then you can answer them, and then you can see if you can get it right. So our first question is, why do we need new drugs? Now this does come up as a question in exam papers. So pause if you want to. If not, here we go. Here are the answers. There are new diseases emerging all the time. One typical one is HIV. That wasn't known of before the 1980s. COVID, things like that, they're always emerging. There's some diseases that have no effective treatment. Treatment doesn't work on them. And the third one is the bacteria have grown resistant to the antibiotics, and so the antibiotics don't work on these diseases anymore. And obviously things that diseases that have used antibiotics in the past to treat them cannot be treated now. So another quick one. This came up a couple of years ago in an exam paper, and it wasn't done very well. And I can understand why, because, you know, it's quite a hard question. Name up to 5 ways drugs are discovered. Now, I think it was a 4 marker, but there are 5 ways. So if you want to pause now. If not, let's have a look. Okay, so the first one is by accident. You may know the story of Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin, which is an antibiotic, completely by accident. He was doing experiments in petri dishes with bacteria, growing bacteria, and put the petri dishes to the side, went away on holiday. When he came home, he could see mould on one of the petri dishes, but where the mould was, the bacteria hadn't grown, and that mould was actually penicillin, and that's how penicillin was discovered. So things are discovered by accident. Traditional medicine, so medicine that is handed down through families or through different religions or races. Anesthetics, so things like unripe poppies, they used to be called the joy plant by the Sumerians. I mean, we're talking 3,400 years ago. No, we're not. We're talking 3,400 years before Christ, so that's 5,000 years ago or so. They used to take unripe poppies and the seeds and use them as anesthetics and painkillers. Watching wildlife, because wildlife are very good at kind of managing their own health. They have to. So, for example, this is one example. Monkeys get citrus oil from limes and lemons, and they rub it on their fur, and that kills insects or gets rid of them. Now, just an aside, because this comes up a lot. If it's got CIDE on the end, it means death, basically. So insecticide is death to the insects. It will kill insects. Herbicide will kill plants. Pesticide will kill pests, and so on. Just an aside, so you know, in case it comes up. And then we've got the modern research, which is probably what we think of, people in labs, computer simulations, discovering different chemicals in drugs. And the chemicals in drugs that actually we need are called active compounds. All right, so that's an important phrase there. So this is one thing that did come up. It was a suggest question, but even so, if you haven't seen it or you haven't thought about it, it's quite hard to answer sometimes. Right, so let's look at one we have to look at, which is aspirin. Now, you've probably heard of it, but aspirin is a painkiller. It was used kind of from about the 1960s, I think, as a painkiller. It was used a lot. Children used to take it, adults used to take it, old people used to take it. But it was discovered from this tree, which is a willow tree. And there was a particular Greek person called Hippocrates, very famous ancient Greek. And he used to get a piece of willow bark and chew it, and that would relieve pain, headaches, fever, and give it to other people as well. Now, Hippocrates You may not have heard him, but doctors, even to this day, have to take something called the Hippocratic Oath, which is basically an oath they have to take to say they'll do no harm to people and they'll treat everyone equally. So he's still famous today, this man, Hippocrates. So 1828, so we're talking, so that's 400 BC, so nearly 2,000 years later, the active ingredient or the active compound in the willow bark was identified, and it was something called salicin. Scientists kind of isolated it as salicylic acid, but unfortunately it did cause a bit of stomach bleeding once they'd isolated that active compound. We think it was the dosage was probably too high, because chewing on a bit of bark with it in is different than actually just taking the active compound. So it was modified to reduce symptoms. Children under 12 are not allowed to take aspirin anymore. I think it was to do with the stomach bleeding, but everyone else is still allowed. Okay, so we've looked at aspirin coming from willow trees. Now we've got to look at foxgloves. Now, if you don't know what flower a foxglove is, which some people don't, there is a picture on the next page. Okay. So about 150 years ago, there was a disease called dropsy. And if you look at this picture and the person poking their finger into this foot, that foot is full of fluid. Okay, absolutely full of fluid. And the reason it's full of fluid is because the heart is not beating correctly, and therefore it's not getting rid of all that fluid in the feet. And that used to be called dropsy. Now, there was a scientist, here he is, William Wittering, he's up here in the corner, along with these foxgloves. And what he noticed, there was an old medicine woman in the town where he lived, and she would give people who had dropsy foxgloves to grind them up and give them to them, and it would cure the dropsy. And it wasn't until later on, when they found the active compound in the foxgloves, it was called digitalis, which is mainly a heart medicine. So if the heart's beating properly, it'll be removing all that fluid, but also a diuretic, which makes you wee out more water. So it's a second way you're getting rid of that fluid. Now, it's not called dropsy anymore, which is a bit of a shame, because I think that's quite a cool name. Dropsy is now called edema or lymphedema, depending on where it is, I think, and what sort of fluid is in there. All right, so we've looked at the willow tree, and we've looked at foxgloves. Now, when I was a child, we weren't allowed to put those foxgloves, those flowers. They fit very nicely on your fingers, and we used to do that, and the adults used to say, you can't do that, they're poisonous. Well, that was why, because they had heart medicine contained in them, and I mean, we did survive, but I'm sure somebody along the way was a bit worried that we may not, with all this heart medicine in there. Okay, now this is the third one you have to know, thalidomide. Now, thalidomide is actually a drug, but over the years, these children have been called thalidomide children, but actually it's the drug. So round about the end of the 1950s, there was a drug developed, and it was a sleeping pill. Okay, and it was fine as absolutely fine as a sleeping pill. You could buy it over the counter, though. You didn't need a prescription. It was actually invented in Germany. And then a few years later, children all over the world started being born with these limbs missing. If you look at these children, they've got bits of limbs. So they've got hands, but the hand is directly on the shoulder. So there's like legs, arms missing. So what happened was, it was originally developed as a sleeping tablet. But in the 1960s, right at the beginning of the 1960s, I think, it was found that it stopped morning sickness in pregnant women. And because it stopped morning sickness, a lot of pregnant women took it. And it wasn't until these babies started being born that they made the link between the drug, thalidomide, and the birth defects of these thalidomide children. Now, even though doctors made the connection, for 10 years it was still prescribed, this drug. So just in this country, there were 12,000 babies that were affected by thalidomide that were actually born, but 2,000 survived, and those 2,000 had quite bad birth defects and deformities. Okay, now thalidomide is still used today, but it is not used as a sleeping tablet, and it is not used in pregnancy. It is used for a disease, if I can jot it down here, called leprosy, which is a skin disease. So it's still used, obviously not in pregnant women. Now, because of the thalidomide, it was really important that drugs were tested properly. Okay, there it is, still used to treat leprosy. So drug trials became so essential, and they take about 15 years, or they should take about 15 years. Okay. Some over the years have been rushed through if it's an emergency, but generally 15 years. So it's a long old trial to get these drugs to know that they're safe. Okay, so a question for you. So stop the video and have a little look at this question and see if you can put them together. Right, hopefully you've had a look. So these should be quite obvious if you've been listening to me talking. So aspirin from the willow tree and digitalis from the foxglove. Just two on these, but they do like these questions. Sometimes there's more. Right, let's move on. Another one. So if you like, you need to pause the video because you've got four here. We've got cannabis, which is marijuana. So that's an illegal drug. We've got a stimulant, we've got thalidomide, and we've got steroids. So have a go, because you may have heard of most of them. And pause the video now. Okay, right, let's have a look, see if we've matched this up. Now, let's do the ones we know first. So thalidomide is now used to treat leprosy. So let's do that one first. All right, there we go. Now, the one that affects heart rate, cause mental illness, muscle growth, used to treat measles. Okay. Muscle growth is a steroid. That's what a lot of bodybuilders take, if you haven't heard of that one. A stimulant is something that's going to make your heart go faster. So, because it stimulates the heart. And the last one, cannabis, this may surprise you. This is an illegal drug. May cause mental illness in some people. Used to treat measles. Measles is a virus, so none of those are going to treat measles. The only way to treat measles is rest and maintaining your symptoms, or getting a vaccination before. Okay, hopefully you had a nice go at that one. Right, this has got a lot of information on it, okay. It is kind of a higher foundation, lower higher question, but have a go. I'm going to give you time to pause it and read it through, and then we'll go over it. Okay, good luck. Okay, hopefully you've had a little go at this. Now, the first bit, I'm hoping you'll know. Name one disease that thalidomide is used to treat now. Leprosy. See, it sneaks in those thalidomide questions. Now, this table is a bit tricky, so I just want to go through it. If you're happy, just relax for a moment while I go through it. So, when we trial drugs, which is in another video, there's 4 phases: preclinical, clinical phase 1, clinical phase 2, and clinical phase 3, and they go in that order. Okay. And then this one is telling us what they're tested on. So cells, tissues, or animals. 20 to 100 healthy volunteers. 100 to 500 healthy volunteers. and 1,000 to 5,000 volunteers. This is telling us the number of compounds that were tested. So on the first stage, more than 10,000 compounds were tested as a treatment. Only in between 5 and 10 made it to the next stage. And then 2 to 3 made it to the next stage. And then only 1 made it to clinical phase 3. Okay. Time taken for test trial in years. So the first stage takes 1 to 4 years. Second stage 2 to 4 years. Third stage 1 to 3 years. And the fourth stage 2 to 4 years. Okay. Now it's not asking you about the drugs, it's asking you about the table. So what is the shortest time taken to develop a new sleeping pill? So this bit here is the time taken. So what we need to do is take all the smallest numbers. So that could take 1 year, 2 years, 1 year, 2 years. And if we add them all up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years is the shortest time. If it said the longest time, we'd add up the longest ones. So we would add up 4, 4, 3 and 4, which is 12 for 15. So the longest, it doesn't ask us in this one, but just in case you had to do it, would be 15 years. Okay, but this one took 6. What is the range? So going into a bit of maths here. What is the range for the number of volunteers needed to complete all the clinical trials for the new sleeping pill? So let's look at the range for the number of volunteers. So we're looking here. This is our number of volunteers. We're not going to count the cells, tissues or animals because they're not volunteers. The range. So the lowest number is 20 and the highest number is 5,000. So to find the range, we take the biggest minus the smallest. So 5,000 minus 20 is 4,980. So give yourself a pat on the back and a gold star if you got that one right. Well done. Right, let's go on to the next one. So we're just going to think about drug trials today. Okay. What I want you to do before the next video, because there's a second one in a minute, is come up with 6 key words that you would use in a question about drug trials, and we are going to start with that on the next video. Alright, so very well done everybody if you made it this far, and I will see you on the drug trials video very soon. Take care, bye.